All right, good evening. Tonight we'll be studying from the book of Judges again. Tonight we're in the 9th chapter of the book of Judges, as we have what we've entitled the abysmal case of Abimelech. He's going to really be a bad judge and just always around. And so we know that, again, the whole time of the judges is a time of corruption. And the people constantly needing deliverance, almost always from outside forces that God has sent to oppress them. But tonight, I guess we need to be a little bit impressed because the people are able to just trouble themselves. They don't need any outside help in being oppressed. They are going to do it to themselves. And so Judges 9, the abysmal case of Abimelech. We start with just a brief review of the last verses of chapter 8 before we get into chapter 9. And let me make a change on this screen. There we are. Now I'm on the screen. As we go back and catch the last verses of chapter 8, and it heads us into chapter 9. So the chapter 8, verse 30, now Gideon had 70 sons, of whom we spoke last week, and the great number of wives. Gideon had 70 sons who were his direct descendants, for he had many wives. And his concubine, because I guess however many wives to make 70 sons wasn't enough. And his concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son, and he named him Abimelech. And so we've got way too many sons for there to be peace, right? We've got 70 sons, and then at least we've got this one, and it's the only one that's mentioned, one son of a concubine. We don't know if there were more of those fellows running around or not, but he's the one who's mentioned because he's going to be important in chapter 9. And he's going to incite a family war. You know, what do you do if you have 70 sons? Well, it turns out you end up having a big pit brawl, and you get rid of most of them. That's unfortunately what happens. So verse 1 of chapter 9. And Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, which is another name for Gideon, the one who contended with Baal, went to Shechem to his mother's relatives and spoke to them and to the whole clan of his mother's father, saying, so he goes to the in-laws of the 70 legitimate sons. I guess they probably wouldn't even be considered his in-laws, but he goes to his mother's folks, and he's going to stir up basically tribal warfare. So speak now, verse 2, in the hearing of all the leaders of Shechem, which is better for you, that 70 men, all the sons of Jerubbaal, rule over you, or that one man rule over you? Also remember, by the way, that I am your bone and your flesh. So would you like to have those 70 jokers ruling over you and having to pay 70 kings? Or would you just like to have one who, by the way, is your good old-fashioned relative? I'm from here, you know. So why don't y'all follow me, and I'll lead us in a better way. Verse 3, and his mother's relatives spoke all these words on his behalf in the hearing of all the leaders of Shechem. And they were inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, he's our relative. Boy, how many decisions are made like that in this world? Why'd you do that? Well, he was a relative. Why'd you do that? He's my cousin. Why'd you do that? Well, it was my brother. They went with the nepotism angle, and we'll see how poorly that turns out. Doesn't always turn out that poorly, and having a favor for kin and affinity for your relatives, that's generally a good thing. God gave us these relatives and ties that bind us and relationships for our good, but some don't use them for that. So they said, again, verse 4, he's our relative. So they gave him 70 pieces of silver from the house of Baal Bereth which is from which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless fellows, and they followed him. Well, just in the last few weeks of our own political system, we've had some controversy because some people were hiring troublemakers, and they were hiring people to go pretend to be members of the opposition political movements and act poorly and cast bad light on them. And we have this shadow funding from dubious sources. Well, here in ancient Israel, this campaign, basically to overthrow the legitimate family of Gideon, is funded with contributions out of a temple of Baal. How do you think that's going to go if that succeeds? The funding for this judge is from the temple of Baal. And then with that pagan money, he hires worthless and reckless fellows. Well, those guys are always for hire. Those guys are always available if you've got the coin. And so they follow him with the coin. Verse 5, and then he went to his father's house at Ophrah, and he killed his brothers and the sons of Jerubbaal, 70 men on one stone. So just lined them up for a head chopping party, and he killed the legitimate heirs of Gideon, save for one. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. So here's the first of a number of occasions in the scripture, which we'll find particularly in the kings of Israel, where once a new king comes, he slays all the heirs of the house of the old kingdom. The house of Jeroboam was slain by Baasha. The house of Baasha was then slain by Zimri. And then the house of Ahab was slain by Jehu. And once that took place in Judah, where Josiah was the only one who escaped, when Athaliah came and slew all of the house of David. And so in this case, though, one of them got away and he hid himself. And so then, verse 6, all the men of Shechem and all of Beth Millo assembled together, and they went and made Abimelech king. Remember, his father Gideon, he was king in all but name, but he wouldn't take the name or the title king. Abimelech has taken it with this horde of worthless men behind him, with pagan funding and murder in his heart. This man now sets himself up to be the judge. They made Abimelech king by the oak of the pillar, which is in Shechem. And so if we just, contrast Gideon and Abimelech, Gideon was called by God, and Abimelech basically called himself. God sent an angel to commission Gideon, and one of the main things early on in Gideon was his hesitancy to lead, his hesitancy to act. This man is not hesitant, this Abimelech. He is self-seeking, and he inflames the people. And where Gideon tore down the house of Baal and the idol of Baal, Abimelech took money from a house of Baal. Gideon sent the soldiers home. Abimelech hired the worthless ones. Abimelech kills God's people. And then it was Gideon who killed the enemies of God. So they both killed, but one killed the enemy. The other killed his brothers. And then, of course, the good man would not be king. Abimelech killed 69 half-brothers to be king. Well, he gets chastised for that. Not that it seemed to make much difference to him. But he gets pretty thoroughly chastised by the one surviving son, the youngest one, Jotham. In verse 7, and when they told Jotham, he went out and stood on the top of Mount Gerizim and lifted his voice and called out. Thus he said to them, listen to me, O men of Shechem, that God may listen to you. So if you want God to receive you, you'd better take heed. And of course, it's at Mount Gerizim. This is where the people had received the law. And so here now is a spokesman standing where the law was given with the blessing and cursings. Here's one now who's going to reprove them and their new self-appointed king. So this is what he tells them. He tells them a parable, verse 8. Once the trees went forth to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, reign over us. So the trees picked a noble tree, and the olive tree said, shall I leave my fatness, which God and men are honored, or by which God and men are honored, and go wave over the trees? Then the tree said to the fig tree, come, you reign over us. And the fig tree said, shall I leave my sweetness and my good fruit and go and wave over the trees? And the tree said to the vine, you come and reign over us. But the vine said to them, shall I leave my new wine, which cheers God and men, and go to wave over the trees? So they went from the noble fruit-bearing trees down the line, the olive, the most prized, the fig, the next, then the vine, which wasn't even a tree, but yet still produced so much good fruit. And all of them said, no, we've got God-appointed business to do. We've got a role to play, and waving over the rest of the trees, that ain't it. And so eventually they get down to the bramble. And the bramble said to the trees, if in truth you are anointing me as king over you, come and take refuge in my shade. If not, may fire come out from the bramble and consume the cedars of Lebanon. Well, this bramble, he's a big talker. He says, if you really want me to be king, come get under my shade. Can you imagine a tree getting under the shade of a bramble? But he said, if not, I'll destroy you. I'll send fire out. And so, therefore, he says, verse 16, now, therefore, if you have dealt in truth and integrity in making Abimelech king, so if that was good, righteous action, if you can sleep well with your conscience and before God, having done that, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have dealt with him as he deserved, so if all those brothers of mine deserved to be killed, for my father fought for you and risked his life and delivered you from the hand of Midian, but you have risen against my father's house today and killed his sons, 70 men, on one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his maidservant, king over the men of Shechem, because he's your relative. And so you guys didn't do good, did you? Yeah, if this is holy and righteous and warranted, all right, God bless it. But you picked the fella because he was one of yours. You were partial in this. He said, if you have dealt in truth and integrity with Jerubbaal and his house today, rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come from Abimelech and consume the men of Shechem and Beth Millo, and let fire come out from the men of Shechem and of Beth Millo, and consume Abimelech. And so if you acted corruptly, which I'm heavily implying you did, if you acted corruptly, why don't y'all just burn each other up? Fire from you to them, fire from him to you. And of course, as we read the rest of this chapter, guess how it's going to play out? Well, it's not going to play out as if it's blessed and rejoicing. And so Jotham escaped and fled, and he went to Beer, and he remained there because of Abimelech, his brother. And so, not remembering the kindness and goodness of Gideon, they let his sons be killed and his last remaining son go off into exile. Well, they're pretty soon going to start the burning of each other up. We're going to find out that they are directly under, from the start of all of this, the curse of God. Verse 22. Now Abimelech ruled over Israel 3 years. Then God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem. And the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. So God sent an evil spirit among them. It's not the only time God sends an evil spirit to one of the leaders in Israel. Most famously, God sent an evil spirit on Saul, which caused him to go into a deep depression and to be greatly troubled of mind, which is when David came in and would play for him and give him some relief. But when people are so willing, like this man, to commit fratricide, kill 69 of his brothers, take the throne that his father refused, they are open to all kinds of evil, and they're not under the protection of God. And God here actively works against them. And here it is by sending an evil spirit. So we think about, well, God has all kinds of servants. He has servants who are ministers to the saints. He has the cherubim, the seraphim. He has all the holy beings. And we think about him working and operating through those. But God is still the creator. And although they're in a lot of rebellion to him, he is still, the one who made the evil spirits. And the evil spirits are more than willing to do evil. And here God is cursing them with evil. And so who's a ready agent to go and do evil things that God is going to send to chastise these folks? Well, an evil spirit. He's more than willing to go and cause mayhem and mischief and all of those things. And that's what God wants, is a affliction to come upon these wicked men. So the evil spirit was sent by God. And again, we know of at least one other occasion where a similar thing took place. As a result, well, murder, mayhem, and evil. Verse 24, so that the violence done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come, and their blood might be laid upon Abimelech their brother, who killed them, and the men of Shechem, who strengthened his hands to kill his brothers. The men of Shechem sent men in ambush against him to the top of the mountains, and they robbed all who might pass by them along the road, and it was told to Abimelech. So these men of Shechem, some of these people start getting out of hand, and they're robbing everybody, and they're robbing people that Abimelech doesn't want them to rob. And so Abimelech needs to put a stop to that if he's going to be king. He can't let these jokers run wild and let their evil be all over the country. And so we can't have, people robbing from the bandit king. And so verse 26, now Gaal, the son of Ebed, came with his relatives, and they crossed over into Shechem, and the sons of Shechem put their trust in him. And they went out into the field and gathered grapes from the vineyards and trod them and held a festival. And then they went to the house of their God, and they ate and drank and cursed Abimelech. After you kill 69 of your brothers, you just can't find no loyalty in this world, can you? It's just hard to find loyal people when you start your reign on mass murder. And so here they are, they're cursing their king. And Gaal, the son of Ebed, says, who's Abimelech? And who's Shechem, that we should serve him? Well, that's pretty much what Abimelech said to get in charge. Is he not the son of Jerubbaal, so Gideon, and was not Zubal his lieutenant? Well, he got in power by stirring up hatred and enmity and jealousy against Gideon's sons. And then somebody points out, hey, he's one of them guys too. And so why are we listening to him? And so he said, why serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem? Why should we serve him? And so the yes against them is now being used not for and by Abimelech, but against him. Would therefore that this people were under my authority. Kind of, well, again, exactly what Abimelech said. Then I would remove Abimelech. And he said to Abimelech, increase your army and come out. So man up, get your army, and come face me, you coward. Oh, as I said, we don't need outsiders to trouble Israel here, do we? They're doing a fine job of it themselves. So 29, would therefore that this people were under my authority, I'd remove Abimelech. So he said, again, increase your army and come out. When Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gael, the son of Ebed, his anger burned. Yeah, hey, rebellion's our line, not yours. We're the ones in charge here. He sent messengers to Abimelech deceitfully, saying, behold, Gael, the son of Ebed, and his relatives have come to Shechem. And behold, they are stirring up the city against you. Now therefore arise by night, you and your people who are with you, and lie in wait in the field. So let's set a trap for those fellas. In the morning, when the sun's up, you shall rise early and rush into the city. And behold, when he and the people who are with him come out against you, you shall do to them whatever you can. So we got secret informants. We got plans of ambush. We got deceit just dripping off every tree. So Abimelech and all the people who are with him arose by night and lay in wait against Shechem in 4 companies. Now Gael, the son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entrance of the city gate. And Abimelech and the people who were with him arose from the ambush. When Gael saw the people, he said to Zebul, look, people are coming down from the top of the mountains. I wonder what they're doing out so early this morning. And Zebul says, oh, you're just seeing shadows on the mountain, as if they were men. And Gael spoke again and says, behold, people are coming down from the highest part of the land. And one company comes by way of the diviner's oak. He said, no, they really are. They're coming. They're coming by that oak tree. They're coming by this way. They're coming by that way. And Zebul said to him, where is your boasting now, of which you said, who is Abimelech, that we should serve him? Is this not the people whom you despised? So go out now and fight with them. All right. You ask them to come out and fight. Guess what? They've come and they're ready for a fight. So Gael went out before the leaders of Shechem and fought with Abimelech. Abimelech chased him and he fled before him, and many fell wounded up to the entrance of the gate. Well, it turns out the rabble that Gael had was weaker than the rabble that Abimelech had. And so his plot to overthrow did not succeed. And so verse 41, Abimelech remained at Arumah, but Zebul drove out Gael and his relatives, so they could not remain in Shechem. Oh, isn't it lovely when you have open fighting and lawlessness among the people? And then it's going to get worse. So it was lawless and it was violent. Now it'll just be atrocious. Literally, it's going to be atrocities. Verse 42, now it came about the next day that the people were in the field, and it was told to Abimelech. So he took his people and divided them into 3 companies and lay in wait in the field. So I guess they thought, well, okay, that was a bad deal yesterday. I'm glad the fighting's over. And they go out to work in the fields, but Abimelech's out there with his people divided up into companies and laying in wait in the field. When he looked and saw the people coming out of the city, he arose against them and slew them. Thanks, King. But he did not want anybody who had anything to do with this rebellion remaining. And so he attacked the townsmen there and got them in ambush. Verse 44, then Abimelech and the company who was with him dashed forward, and they stood in the entrance of the city gate. The other 2 companies then dashed against those who were in the field and slew them. So they go and hold the gate while the others do the fighting in the fields. And Abimelech fought against the city all that day, and he captured the city and the people who were in it. Then he razed the city and sowed it with salt. Okay, there's your brutality and atrocity. This is God's promised land. This is supposed to be the land where you can live in the house you didn't build and with the vineyard you didn't plant and dwell in peace and security. And now because some of the rabble have decided to be in charge and then fought each other who got to be in charge, he has now destroyed the entire city. And to make sure that nobody can live there and raise their crops there, he sows it with salt. You know, that's what the Romans did to the Carthaginians because they got tired of fighting them for so long. This guy, first time out the gate, not far from home, sows the fields of a city with salt. In Deuteronomy, it said, don't do this. Deuteronomy 20. When you besiege a city a long time to make war against it in order to capture it, you shall not destroy the trees by swinging an axe against them, for you may eat from them, and you shall not cut them down. For is the tree in the field of a man that it should be besieged by you? And so God said, even in siege warfare, don't just despoil the land and denude it of all things so you can have more resources for your war. He says, only the trees which you know are not fruit trees shall you destroy and cut down, that you may construct siege works against the city by making war with you until it fails. And so God said, spare the land. When you're fighting cities, and again, that was a long time thing, not just a one-day battle like this. God said, spare the land, spare the trees. Abimelech's just going straight for the salt. And so when the leaders of the Tower of Shechem heard it, they entered the inner chamber of the temple of El-Berith. And so in a temple fortification, the leaders of the city start to plot what they can do about this. And it was told Abimelech that all the leaders of the Tower of Shechem were gathered together. So Abimelech went up to Mount Zalmon, and he and all the people who were with him, and Abimelech took an axe in his hand and cut down a branch from the trees. And he lifted it and laid it on his shoulder. Then he said to the people with him, what you have seen me do, hurry and do likewise. And the people cut down each one his branch and followed Abimelech and put them on the inner chamber and set the inner chamber on fire over those inside, so that all the men of the Tower of Shechem also died, about 1,000 men and women. So not content with having taken the city, salted the fields, destroyed the place, he now goes after the last stronghold and burns 1,000 people out of this idol's temple fortress that they had withdrawn to. And so just abysmal, brutal, atrocious in every regard. This is what happens when worthless people get in charge. Well, he's not satisfied yet. He's on the war path, and he's got some more warring to go. And so verse 50, then Abimelech went to Thebez, and he camped against Thebez and captured it. But there was a strong tower in the center of the city, and all the men and the women with all the leaders of the city fled there and shut themselves in. Well, we've seen this before, haven't we? Yeah, resort to the tower fortification, and Abimelech knows what to do. So they went up then to the roof of the tower. So Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it and approached the entrance of the tower to burn it. Yeah. All right. Worked well the first time. Let's just do this again. But a certain woman, so just like in the case of Deborah, the victory was denied to a warrior, to a man, and given to a woman. So in this case, there's a woman who sees him right under her there at the base of the tower. She threw an upper millstone on Abimelech's head, crushing his skull. Well, maybe don't get so close to the siege towers. Don't get so close in there to the fortress. And so they dropped a big rock on his head. And then he called quickly to the young man, his armor bearer, and said to him, draw your sword and kill me, so that it will not be said of me, a woman slew me. Well, guess what, buddy? We're going to say it anyway. And so his young man pierced him through, and he died. First guy to claim to be a king in Israel. What a guy. What a life. What a rule. What a way to go. Reminds us of the Proverbs, Proverb 13:15. Good understanding produces favor, but the way of the treacherous is hard. Yeah, sometimes it's hard as a rock dropped on your head. Verse 55, when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, each departed to his own home. Yeah, nobody else is fighting for this. I can't imagine anybody else wanted this. Nobody else thought pursuing this to that degree, I'm sure, was a good idea. No one tries to vindicate Abimelech. No one rises as a successor to take his place. And so the one man who had this all gathered up into this cause, when he perishes, so does the cause. And so Israel is no longer troubled by themselves for a bit. There's a little bit of peace. We do have a statement, an explicit one. I think we could probably see God's hand in this, since he sent the evil spirit that caused all the ruckus, which ended in this way anyway. But here we have at the end of this chapter a clear statement, which we don't often have, that this was the direct judgment of God. Verse 56, thus God repaid the wickedness of Abimelech, which he had done to his father in killing his 70 brothers. And so God's judgment for that particular crime, that's why all this took place. Also, God returned all the wickedness of the men of Shechem on their heads. So just as Jotham had said, right, may fire come from him and burn you up, and may fire come from you and burn him up, fire come from him and burn you up. So reciprocal fire. You're going to let each of you get burned up. And so we're told in verse 57 that part came true as well. Also, God returned all the wickedness of the men of Shechem on their heads, and the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerubbaal, came upon them. So that son of Gideon spoke, obviously by inspiration, he spoke a curse in the will of God to these people. And so God used the wicked to punish the wicked. And just as God had used that evil spirit to bring about a righteous end. It reminds us of the Psalms. We'll close with this, a reading from Psalm 58. Psalm 58 in verse 6, beginning, O God, shatter their teeth in their mouth. Break out the fangs of the young lion, O Lord. Let them flow away like water that runs off. When he aims his arrow, let them be as headless shafts. Let them be as a snail which melts away as it goes along, like the miscarriages of a woman who never see the sun. Before your pots can feel the fire of thorns, he will sweep them away with a whirlwind, the green and the burning alike. The righteous will rejoice when he sees the vengeance. He will wash his feet in the blood of the wicked. And all men will say, surely there is a reward for the righteous. Surely there is a God who judges the earth. Sometimes we see what happens to wicked people. They get their just deserts. They get their comeuppance. They get, those who live by the sword, die by the sword. And we say, surely God did that. There's a reward for the righteous, and he judges the earth. So that's the abysmal case of Abimelech. And I'd really like to say, boy, it sure gets better from here, but it doesn't. We'll go on in the book of Judges into deeper darkness, into deeper depravity, into deeper and steeper lawlessness. And that'll be our next time when we go toward Japheth, that most really confounding and aggravating of Judges. So that'll be next time. Hopefully you can join us then.